sitting here in Moscow, I want to ask you how it is possible to combine business or daily job with yoga practice.
Yeah, not thinking, just being, just feeling. It's like people naturally looking for practical advice,
Yes.
right? How to do this and how to do that, and like you said, how to combine work with yoga practice. And the focus in the traditional path of yoga is not actually on manipulation of action. So there's actually not much question about how to, because that's not the most effective way to sort of improve one's life. If you try to change your behavior, you may be successful, but it's sort of like taking an aspirin. You take away the headache, but you don't take away the source of the headache, right? In yoga, then, it becomes more of a question of understanding and awareness, right? Do you understand sort of the underlying source of whatever challenge you have? Say if you have like difficulty finding time for yoga practice, maybe it's not a question of time making it's not a question of rearranging your schedule, it's a question of actually just being aware of how you're spending your time and in what ways you're spending your time. Actually, the more you have and the more you do, the more stress you begin to experience, and the less happy you become. And even more critically, the less aware you become, right? Because everything is at the surface. And a lot of it has to do with like a kind of a busyness of your mind, right?
Yes, but yoga is something that could help you in that case.
Yeah, but again, people mistake yoga as a kind of activity. Which there is some action and some movement involved in yoga, but actually the core of yoga is not activity. Like I said, in this materialist society, we tend to focus on what I do, right? Or what I have. And it's like the solution almost always is do more, have more, right?
Yeah.
But the focus, if you really want to make a change, the focus has to go on something much more sort of subtle. It's like the quality of what you do. And quality is often determined by kind of like deeper level enjoyment, right? Just the capacity to recognize, first of all, recognize enjoyment, and then begin to design your life around that kind of enjoyment, right? Because if you have a lot of things and a lot of activities that you're engaged in that you don't enjoy, it begins to interfere with your capacity to develop real awareness.
So does it mean that we should refuse to do things that we are not?
Right. So it's often not about doing more, it's about actually doing less. I think it's important to take a look at all of your professional and work activities, right? Because for me to practice and teach yoga, while it is a kind of a job, it's so enjoyable to me that it's not a job. It's like I'm on permanent vacation, right?
Yes.
When you're looking through the mind, it's all about it's just automatically stressful.
Yes.
Right, because the mind, one thing that it's particularly good at is it's kind of like it's good at survival analysis. So it's always looking at what potential danger is coming.
Yes.
So you're always analyzing every situation from a kind of a negative point of view, right?
Yeah.
So then it's like really not about enjoyment, right? It's about avoiding danger. It's about surviving. So it's like you worry about money, you worry about your job, you worry about your relationship, and you're always like, if you notice, when you're looking through your mind, you're always worried about the future, right? It's actually not real. It's like kind of artificial in a way. So you're creating stress for yourself, and I like to say, like, if you look at what actually happens as opposed to what you're worried about what happens, most of what you worry about doesn't happen.
And could you please share, if it's possible to share it, why it was needed for you to spend 12 years working on real estate?
Well, I mean, what we think of as spiritual practice is oftentimes quite limited, right? We think it's being in some monastery or some quiet room meditating.
Yeah.
But the actual spiritual practice is not limited by any one place or activity, right? I think he saw very clearly that for me to be in a monastery is like natural, right? It's not difficult for me. It's like I actually prefer to be, in a small room somewhere in the mountains, not seeing anybody, right? It's comfortable, naturally comfortable for me. So he saw that I needed to develop a kind of a stronger level of awareness, right? It's sort of like, it's easy to do yoga when everything feels good and everything's quiet, right?
Yeah.
But say you have a lot of pain in your back or in your knee, right? And you have a lot of noise, then it takes a different level of skill, a stronger level of awareness to practice in that situation, right? Anybody can practice in quiet place, in nature, everything feels good. It's easy, right?
Yes, it is.
But it's harder to, if you're, say for example, you're in an argument with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, it's a lot harder to be calm in the middle of that, right? You have to have a different level of skill, really.
You are practicing Ashtanga yoga, and I wanted to understand why do you prefer this style of yoga?
I think it's hard to explain these kind of things. It's like, why do you marry the person you marry? I mean, you can come up with some reason, like, of course, well, he's a nice guy and he has a good job and and all this kind of thing. But the real reason, maybe
You just fall in love?
there's something, something that you can't really identify. It's something you just feel. I think it's a combination for me of like the intensity of the practice, the quality of the teacher, quality of my experience. I've always been a person who's been attracted to anything that kind of makes deep changes in your personality, right? And so for me, Ashtanga yoga was that, especially going to India to practice. It was such a wild and kind of mysterious experience that every time I went there, and because of the deep level of practice, I came back a different person. So that's just automatically attractive to me. Pattabhi Jois did not teach actually that much technique. He didn't actually give that much information, right? It was more the quality of his energy, right? There's certain kind of intensity, right? There's certain kind of presence that he brought. I always said that like being in a room with him was like being with a wild like tiger or something. You know, you have that kind of feeling. Just very, very strong. It's just a question. Powerful and profound element is just the ability to sit still on the floor for long periods of time. From doing yoga and sleeping, right? Because the quality of your sleep is affected too. So I enjoy both equally as much. City or forest? I like it when there's a city in the forest. Am inspired, I naturally inspire. So, you know, it's sort of like when you're in a really good relationship, you can't tell who's giving and who's taking. Because sometimes giving feels like receiving and receiving feels like giving. Skateboards and bicycles, electric skateboards, motorcycles. Yeah, I like a lover who's the best friend. Isn't that the best? Less fear or sadness? Actually, I really enjoy being sad. Yeah, it's a very nice emotion. Joy or calm? Again, for me, it's the same. Calm. Yeah, I'm kind of both. Again, like I love how enjoyable it is to use your mind, and of course also the body is amazing, and when you can combine the two, it's even better. Spirit or soul? I thought spirit and soul are the same thing. What's the difference between spirit and soul? Does God exist? Yes.